George Floyd gets killed May 25th, 2020. The result of that was all of a sudden, you had all of these companies who were talking about, the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion. Some $50, $60 billion in commitments was made by companies to give to social organizations. We begin to hear phrases like social impact and social change, black economic, social justice, and on and on and on. And who really benefited? A lot of people got jobs as DEI jobs. 3 years later, that 50, 60 billion, nearly all of it not spent. A lot of those DEI people getting laid off right now. Now, I told y'all those DEI jobs were bullshit. I told y'all that. So to my next guest, Randi Bryant. She, of course, DEI expert. She calls herself a DEI disruptor. You've been pissing your DEI people off on social media, on your Instagram page, talking about this stuff.
Yes.
And again, we're now seeing it borne out in the folk losing their jobs.
Right.
Getting laid off.
Right. Because before it was a PR effort. Companies knew they had to do something, particularly after the murder of George Floyd, and they made announcements. They made announcements like, we are hiring a DEI professional. And it was a joke, to be quite frank with you. They hired some people that were, as long as they were part of a underrepresented group but had no DEI experience, they gave them the jobs. And don't get me wrong, this is not the professionals' fault. The people who do this care, and so I hope I'm not upsetting my people, because they're my people. To do this work is hard work. But they definitely, it was a PR move, and they were used, They provided these DEI experts with absolutely no power, absolutely no voice, no budgets, no staff, no nothing. So it was just a marketing effort. And so when we talk about the number of jobs that are being lost, along with that number, we also must consider the number of people who have been burnt out in 2 years and have left their jobs. Because people who get into DEI care. It's personal for them. They have been that person who has been mistreated and no longer want to be mistreated. They have been that person who was unable to move up in a company that they were overqualified to do. So they leave because they got into it, because they cared, but they were not given the resources to really make any change.
And the thing I kept saying to people over and over and over again, I use this phrase all the time, P&L responsibility.
Right.
Meaning that in any company, if you ain't got P&L responsibility, you don't have profit and loss responsibility, you are not a valued person. And I've spoken many conferences, given speeches, and I said the same thing about these jobs, and some people in the audience got mad. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I said, they ain't real jobs. Because the DEI job today is the equivalent of the global diversity officer job in the past 10, 15 years. Mm-hmm. And before that, in the 70s and 80s, it was the vice president for community affairs.
Yes.
In many places, that was the Negro executive job.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me say this. First of all, we do talk about how it is the Negro executive job. But one thing I don't think people realize is that the vast majority of DEI positions go to white people. 75, 76% of all DEI positions, the top.
Right, but see, that's what changed. Because what happened was, see, again, the VP Community Affairs job with Negroes. Then all of a sudden, and then when it became about diversity, then it was like, oh, so we're going to include Black and Latino and Asian, Native American, gay, women. And so all of a sudden, you start seeing all these folks who are chief diversity officers or heads of DEI don't look like us. And then you start saying, well, what the hell is this diversity, equity, inclusion? I remember when I spoke at Coca-Cola, I gave a keynote address. This was several years ago. And they asked me, and they said, how would you, if you were talking about diversity, how do you see it? I said, black first. I said, then everybody else. And they kind of looked at me. I said, let me be real clear. These programs were created coming out of the civil rights movement.
Oh, yes.
I said, so it was black first. And I said, so I'm going to say black, Latino, Native American, Asian. I said, that's it. I ain't including nobody else. I said, because if you gay, if you white and gay, you still white.
Right.
And I had to explain this to people. I said, because this was part of my problem when it came to a lot of these jobs, because they just started trying to throw it. Then it became, the diversity of thought, the diversity of ideology.
Yes.
I'm like, yo, no, I ain't trying to hear that bullshit.
But they like that because it makes them more comfortable. I mean, the problem with DEI is that it has become, or it probably started that way, if we're honest, white-centered, right? And so, first of all, mainly white people were hired to do the job. Of course, white women. The same people who have benefited the most from all civil rights movement. Because if people are feeling uncomfortable with differentness, they are going to bring people in who are most like them. So a white executive, and still most executives, most management, most directors and vice presidents are white, hetero, cis males. They feel most comfortable with white women. So they can bring in white women and say, oh, look at our diversity. Look how great we are. But those same white women are the closest to white men. They are not suffering the same way that, for instance, black people are. So they don't advocate the same way. And those same women who would get angry at me saying that are the same women who would say, it's not fair that we have all men making decisions with Roe versus Wade. DEI at this point, the reason why I call myself a disruptor, to be honest, after being in this field through all the name changes you talk about for such a long time, I'm really just quite disgusted at what it has turned into. It's a joke. Not very many people take DEI seriously whatsoever because we have been ineffective. Not because we don't care, but because we have not been armed with the resources to do anything. Because the companies don't care. Companies care about diversity, equity, and inclusion as far as it affects their reputations. As far as...
Not bottom line, reputation.
Reputations, period. They do not see it as a business...
Imperative.
Imperative, absolutely not. And I tell people, and this is quite different, I don't believe DEI belongs in human resources. I say DEI in human resources is like a person who is not kind but goes to church every Sunday. It doesn't fix everything, right? I mean, yes, you go to church every Sunday. If you are a person who is committed to having a diverse, equitable, and inclusive company, that means you are looking at your product. For instance, these tech companies are the main ones who are letting people go. Is my product accessible to people with disabilities? Are there people at all price points who can access this product? It means supplier diversity. Are we buying our products from all sorts of people? Are we, does everyone feel as if they have room to be promoted and be successful? But so it is not just do our facilities accommodate all people? If someone has some sort of disability, or do we have all gender bathrooms? It is something, if you care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it is something that must be done throughout the entire organization, and it cannot be this add-on at the end of everything else to make things right. Just like that going to church on Sundays is not going to make everything right if you've acted a fool the whole week before. All
right, y'all, we're talking about DEI and how much of a joke it is. Let me bring in Brianna, Matt, and Michael as well. Brianna, I'll start with you. Your take on this whole DEI explosion. People are all excited, and I kept telling people I'm like, don't get excited, y'all. This ain't number one person and the secretary getting the job.
Absolutely. Randy has been saying that for years on end. They wanted to placate us. They thought, we'll give them something and they'll forget to look at the deliverables. The fact that most DEIs did not report directly to the CEO, as Randy have told us over and over and over again, to make them accountable in doing that. They reported to HR. And so there wasn't enough wiggle room. They gave these jobs just for show, and they didn't give them power, right? They gave them a lot of money to say, hey, we're giving you money, be quiet, your show, let's just, play along for a certain amount of time. And the real effects of what it needed to be was not done. And it's apparent that they did not care about it actually getting done. And they thought enough time passed where we would have forgotten that we still want things done in the workplace.
And now, Randy, now you have these universities, now Republican legislatures, that change it. Now they want to remove any DEI language from job applications.
Right. They see DEI as a social justice piece. They see it as a nice to have. They see it as honestly kowtowing to the demands of Black and brown and gay people in the LGBTQIA community. I don't even think that they can relate what it feels like to be in a place, because we spend a lot of time at work now, right? To be in a place where you feel unwelcomed. They don't seem to care what it feels like to sense that you have no way of advancement. Why should you work hard if you don't feel as if you can excel, if you could be promoted? Because you don't see anyone who looks like you at those same ranks. They don't seem to think it's important to not be able to sit at your desk because it's not designed correctly for a person who may have a disability. They don't care about the stereotypes. They don't care about the microaggressions that people face every day. It's not important to them because they haven't had to face it. If they were intelligent, though, they would recognize that those issues affect their bottom line, the way that people are losing employees, because ultimately people want to feel safe and a sense of belonging. They say it's the #1 need at work. They want to feel a sense of belonging where they go to work.
So this is from the Texas Tribune right here. Texas A&M University system bans diversity statements from job applications. This was because of John Sharp, who is the chancellor, right there. This is his photo. It was Governor Greg Abbott who made these decisions. And so Greg Abbott, and people are saying that, first, legal experts said the governor's office mischaracterized the legal practices employers use when considering diversity in their hiring. But bottom line here, Matt, is, look, these people, they hate diversity, they hate multiculturalism, they hated quotas, they hated any of this. What they really want us to continue seeing is white domination in all facets of American society.
I think that's correct. And I think Randy was spot on with the dog whistling that we're seeing in terms of them tying everything into social justice and trying to, kind of get in part of that zeitgeist that we see now, which is where they're attacking everything, quote, woke. But I actually want to kind of take, a little different position on something that Brianna said. I don't think this was a matter of them trying to capitulate to Black and brown people. I think this was a matter of white people trying to make themselves feel better about their response to the systemic issues that people were calling about with George Floyd. I think what you see with this is companies seeing an opportunity to capitalize upon their social, outward facing attempts to be more diverse and what have you. And I think that is something that they thought would connect to a greater bottom line, particularly at a time where we were all, a different kind of consumer, right? Buying things online, looking at companies differently. And I think it was an opportunity for them, at least in their eyes, to capitalize upon that. So I had no illusions whatsoever that this was going to continue. And I had no illusions that this was going to be robust because, as Randy said, this is a lot of people who had DEI jobs and had no real authority, couldn't really systemically change anything in the corporations. And we knew this was going to happen. So none of it is a surprise. And I think that's correct. I think this is about white people in power wanting to keep that power, particularly as it relates to Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis, who I say on this show every single week are both trying to run for president and doing everything they can to show that they are the true conservative. So this doesn't surprise me.
And I so agree with you. And what's interesting to me is that they always try to say, we want to hire the best person for the job. We don't need DEI. DEI, just like most things, were put in place to counteract people's bigotry. If you really believe that they're hiring the best person for the job, that means you are assuming that white, cis-het males are superior to everyone else, because the majority of power positions are held by that group of people. So what they're saying, what they actually have convinced themselves, is that we have these jobs because we rightfully deserve them, because we are superior than any other candidate that exists. Because those are the people who get these jobs over and over again. And so we put these DEI programs in place to say, no, you should look at and consider other people, to force people to stop being so bigoted, to force people to make decisions outside of themselves because they can only see themselves. But they don't like that. They don't like that whatsoever, as we see. So yes, they are getting rid of all DEI language and putting themselves in positions that they don't even have to pretend anymore that they're considering other folks for jobs.
Michael?
Yeah, I was skeptical of this. It seemed like there were corporations tripping over themselves to show that they weren't racist or weren't bigoted or things like this. And, I was like, okay, so it took George Floyd being killed and it being recorded and it going viral for you to realize that your business practices are wrong. Now, and then the other thing and Randy hit on this, and it's good to see you again, Randy. 76, when we look at the article from NBCnews.com, 76% of the chief diversity officer positions went to white people. So right there, it's like the game inside of the game. It's like, okay, it's like three-car Monte or something. It's like, okay, so we're gonna do diversity, equity, and inclusion, and most of the jobs are gonna go to white people. It's, I mean, talk about pimping ain't easy. I mean, so my question would be, okay, where do we go from here, Randy? What should we be forcing these corporations that get billions of our dollars each year to do?
First thing you got to do is read my book, White Fear, because this ain't going anywhere anytime soon.
It's not going anywhere anytime soon. The reason why I call myself a disruptor is that I refuse to represent DEI as it stands today. They are going to pay the price. Indeed came out with a survey just recently that said 49% of all Black employees are thinking about leaving their jobs because they're unhappy. 49%. So they need us, right? We know the world needs us. So if they don't get it together, we are starting businesses on our own and saying, you know what, you don't accept me, I'll find another way. We are the kings and queens of finding another way, right? So it's gonna hurt them in the long run. I believe that we need to push people to be held accountable. Where is the money, like you asked yesterday, Roland? How much money are you putting in? How many employees do you have of these certain identity groups? Who sits on your board? And to keep out, because I'm starting to do my own DEI report cards, cursory, looking at companies and saying, I don't care about what your mission statement says. I'm looking at your board, I'm looking at your employees, and you get an F. And also, as individuals, go out there and do those Glassdoor reviews. Let people know how you are feeling as a Black person within your companies. Because, like I said, bottom line is that they care about reputation, so don't allow them to get away with just these broad announcements. Individually, we can make a difference.
When you put them on blast on social, trust me, they respond.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot
tell our own story if we can't pay for it.
This is about covering us.
Invest in black-owned media.
Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks.
We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible.
Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.